A few years ago, I was trying to catch a flight to Boise, Idaho to visit some dear friends of mine. And now, I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a beautiful city. I don't know who's paying their bills, but the streets are immaculate. But the problem from our end is that there's no direct flight to be able to get there. Now, for myself, the more I fly, the older I get, the pickier I am. For example, I have to have the aisle seat or I'm not going. I enjoy having good books, but more importantly, I don't want to sit next to somebody who for 3.5, 4 hours is going to be talking to me. It's like I like to say hello and then I like to be by myself. And I like to have a nice menu of delicious snacks. Do I ask too much? So I get on this first flight and the rituals are going as usual. Buckling the seatbelt, stewardess walks up and down, checks everything, instructions start, and we start to make our way. And then the captain comes on. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to get off the plane. There's a slash in the tire. It'll be about a 45-minute delay. Now, the problem is I only have 1 hour between my connecting flights, and my connecting flight is the only flight to Boise, Idaho. So I'm stressing. And I'm like first in line to get back on this plane as if that's going to speed anything up. And I dive back into my chair, throw that seatbelt back on, go through all the rituals. All right, lady, hurry it up. Then we start to make our move. We get onto the tarmac. We're waiting for our turn. And the captain comes on. Folks, we're going to have to pull back in. Someone's sick on the plane. Who went to Chicky and Pete's? Let's go, people. So then we have to get back off and we're all off the plane again. And now I'm staring at the clock. Beads of sweat are forming on the top of my forehead. My pulse is racing. My heart's pounding. I start rationalizing. It's okay if we just fly really, really fast, as if my will is going to make this happen. I'm going to get there. We can still make it. We get back on the plane. Let's go, let's go, let's go. We get under the tarmac. We're standing in line. We're just waiting. The captain comes on. Folks, we're going to have to pull back in. We're out of gas. So finally, eventually, we take off, right? But as you can imagine, I have long since missed my flight. Now, luckily enough, or providentially so, I was able to find a late night other set of connected flights. So I've now taken like 3 or 4 planes to get to Boise, Idaho. Well, picture me upon arrival. My friends are waiting to greet me. They have their little signs. They're really excited. I am stressed. I'm hungry. I stink. Whatever high maintenance flying preferences that I had, they're way out the window. I'm soaked in sweat because I had to sprint to catch a plane. I was seated next to the toilets and my clothes were just drinking in the odor. And I'm so tired, my eyeballs are screaming. I don't care at this point about what situation I'm in. Just getting to Boise is enough. But pause and think about that for a second, because you've been in that space at some point in your life. Just enough suddenly becomes more than enough when suffering and frustrations mount. Is that not true? Think about when you were younger and people would ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What did you say? What did you say? Always, kids, they dream high. They say, I want to be a famous actor. I want to be a well-known singer. I want to be an astronaut. They're always like shooting for the top. But the vast majority of us, in reality, that doesn't happen, right? Why? Well, because hardships of life, risks involved, injustices that inevitably happen along the way, they can wear us down. And suddenly, instead of that 5-car garage that we were totally committed to for our future, we're happy if we have a driveway. But one wonders then when Philip at the Last Supper turns to Jesus and says to him, show us the Father and that will be enough. Man, Philip, what have you suffered? Has God so disappointed your expectations that now you find yourself reaching for the minimum bar? And yet, every time I encounter that line from him, something resonates about that. I get it, even though I don't know why. Somehow, along the way, I think in our relationship with God, even if we're not conscious of it, we get disappointed. But today, the language of God really pushes back. So in describing God's mission for Isaiah to go out and be his prophet, to gather together the scattered Israel, to rebuild Israel's tribes, after all of this incredible language, God then says, it is not enough. Even that calling is not enough. I will make you a light to the nations, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. In other words, the only one who's really applying limits in the spiritual life is us. Jesus will say in the Gospels, I have come that they may have life and have it in abundance. He doesn't say, I have come that they may have just enough to live. When Jesus multiplied the loaves for the 5,000 people, did he make just enough bread so that everybody had enough? No, there were whole wicker baskets left over. Did he shed just enough blood to redeem us? No. It dripped all over the garden. It splashed during the scourging. It dribbled all the way along each of the stations of the cross, and it poured out on Calvary when his heart was pierced. Folks, if we're not living the abundant life, it's not because God has failed to give it to us. I think we often confuse abundance for worldly standards, like that pain-free, materially wealthy, overall secure life. I mean, who wouldn't want that? I would love that. But that's not actually the abundance of life. Jesus possessed life in abundance, and he didn't have any of those things. In fact, he was freed from needing those things so that he could have the fullness of life. And what does he say? This is eternal life, to know the Father. And because of his relationship with his Father, he has every virtue in himself. He has the fullness of the Spirit within him, and he has the gates of eternity open before him. And this is the abundance he wants to give each of his disciples, and in particular, every one of us. The message of the gospel is that we actually don't need money, garages, even aisle seats to live an abundant life. And the dysfunction of celebrities makes that obvious. What we need is Christ, who is the way, the truth, and the life. So if you take anything away from this, it's this. Don't fly American Airlines. You're going to miss your flight. But secondly, resist the temptation to look out there for your fulfillment. Everything you need is right here in this tabernacle. And the closer we draw to him, the more obvious that truth will become. The truth that God doesn't meet our expectations. He exceeds them.